let's go ahead and just jump right into the SEC preview, and then we'll talk word association. I'm going to let my dog out of the room real quick, so fire away there, J-Man.
SEC East, we're going to do first. I assume we both have the same team there at number one in the SECs. And I have Georgia. Quarterback Carson Beck is going to be their starter, of course. They lost who was their starting? Stetson Bennett. Almost
Stetson Bennett. Yep.
JT Daniels. Stetson Bennett. He was there about 10 years and he won multiple national titles, and I was with the LA Rams. But it sounds like Carson Beck is going to be there, which of course I'm sure he's a former 5-star guy. Just next man up for him. Running back Kendall Milton, who averaged 7 whatever yards per carry last year. Brock Bowers.
He's a stud.
Yeah, best tight end, if you can even call him a tight. He's kind of a hybrid tight end.
He's a utility, yeah.
Kind of guy. He will probably be a top 10 NFL draft pick, and he probably could have been after his freshman year. Now he's a junior, finally draft eligible, but he's an absolute star. I got a transfer wide receiver, Dominic Lovett from Missouri, who had over 800 yards last year. They have 6 players on the SEC preseason first team all defense, or all SEC first team defense. So Kirby Smart knows how to coach defense and just keeps putting out players, and they have turned into a dynasty there in the SEC.
Yes, they have. I also have Georgia winning the East. I have Georgia, spoiler alert, but I have them as one of my playoff teams. I think that was in my one of my 23 bowl predictions for 2023. I need to go back and make sure I didn't say that they're winning the national championship, which I might have them anyways, but I want to make sure that wasn't my bold prediction. I know I had them at least making the playoff. But, yeah, you hit on pretty much everything I had on there. New offense coordinator, Mike Bobo, who was the Colorado State head coach, did not do well out there, but he's going to be the new OC, replacing Todd Monken, who'd been their OC there at Georgia for a little while. They also have a wide receiver transferring from Mississippi State, Ra Thomas, who should be a factor, along with Dominic Lovett from Missouri. So we're seeing more and more. I know we talk about this every week, but not only are we seeing tons of guys in the transfer portal, we're seeing more and more transfer within conference, which is still taking time for me to get used to.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up because there have been quite a few guys transfer in conference in all the conferences. And,
right.
That was something where coaches used to be able to block that. And now they just don't, because the optics would look bad. I wish they could go back to doing that, because that'd make it more interesting.
I do too.
And probably eventually they'll change some rules where it makes it a little more difficult to kind of to transfer at all. But especially within conference, because I don't really like that.
Yeah, I think, and I'm guessing people go after the people within the conference because they've seen them play more than the guys, they don't play. So it just makes sense there. Georgia's defense is going to be great again, I think, for the third consecutive year. So, I mean, they are turning into a dynasty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they were always kind of that sleeping giant, we would call them. I mean, they'd get to SEC championship games and all that, but it felt like they couldn't get over that hump, kind of like Clemson.
Exactly who I was going to say.
Yeah. Yep. Sleeping giant that you always think they're really good, but they can never get over that hump, and they won a few, and then that's kind of what happened with Georgia. So
I remember growing up, my cousin and me, we'd play a lot of NCAA football dynasties together, and we would take teams. He seemed to always pick a Georgia or a Clemson, a team that was always top 15, top 20, but teams that in our lifetime up to that point never got to the championship game or won it or anything. And now we're seeing those teams get over the hump. I mean, Michigan's close. Michigan's real close. We haven't seen them really in our lifetime. They won it in 97, but we were 5 years old at the time. So now they're getting close. Could they be the next ones to make that leap? We'll talk about Michigan next week in our Big Ten preview. But, yes, we both have the Bulldogs winning the East. Who do you have number 2?
I have Tennessee.
I do as well.
Yeah, Joe Milton, who transferred from Michigan a few years ago, he threw 10 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in Hendon Hooker's absence last year. So they're expecting huge things from him. The running back Jabari Small had 50.
They're ready to give him the Heisman Trophy down in Knoxville.
Oh boy. Tennessee fans, they don't play around with their hyperbole whatsoever. No. But
they're mean.
Yeah, you would know more than I would, or better than I would, that they are mean. Probably most SEC fan bases are mean. But I don't remember Auburn talking that much trash when you guys played them.
No, it
That
was
bowl.
funny. The night before the game, they're like, "Oh, it's gonna be a good game," and I don't know why I was real confident. Maybe because Auburn was 7-5, and then 2 minutes into the game, I'm like, "We're in trouble. We're in big trouble." Oh man! But Tennessee fans were real confident they were gonna smack Purdue a couple years ago, and Purdue was missing George Karlaftis, David Bell, a handful of other guys due to COVID, and found a way to pull it out in overtime. So, yep. Yeah, but you talked on Joe Milton. Of course, Josh Heupel's done a good job at Tennessee getting him back to heights they haven't seen since Phil Fulmer. Brew McCoy and Squirrel White, what a name. Squirrel White are going to be two good wide receivers for him. Their defense only gave up 22.8 points per game. So if they can replicate that, they're going to be very good again.
Yeah.
Who do you have number 3?
I have Kentucky.
I have Kentucky 4.
I almost had them 4, but I'm like, I like Kentucky more than the team I put fourth. Of course, they lost Will Levis, but they have transferred Devin Leary from NC State. He did not have a great year last year, and he had some injury issues, but he threw 35 touchdowns in 2021. Was thought of as one of the top quarterbacks in college football heading into the season last year. They have a transfer running back, Ray Davis, who has over 3,000 career all-purpose yards, so they're expecting huge things out of him. And then Deion Walker on their defense is an absolute beast.
Yeah, Ray Davis is transferring from Vanderbilt, which Vanderbilt has nothing anyways. We'll talk about them momentarily, but that kills anything Vanderbilt had. Yeah. Mark Stoops has done a really good job here at Kentucky on the recruiting trail too. They do have a new OC, Liam Cohen, who I think he was on their staff a while back. I don't know if he was coordinator previously, but he was at least on Mark Stoops' staff at one time. So now he's back. Their defense was really good last year. Only gave up 19.2 points per game. And I think they returned a decent amount of starters on the defense side of the ball. So,
yeah. Kentucky was thought of like what Kansas has been. Of course, Kansas had that good year last year. But they were kind of thought of as, they're going to go 2-10 every year sort of deal. And Stoops has done an incredible job there.
And their trio of wide receivers could probably be stacked up with any trio in the SEC. Taven Robinson, Baron Brown, and Dane Kay. Everybody talks very highly of those three. So he's done a really good job turning a basketball school into a real competitive football school as well.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing your number 4 pick's the same who I had number 3.
I have South Carolina.
I have South Carolina number 3.
Yeah. Spencer Rattler, obviously the big name there. It didn't work out for him in Oklahoma, but he had a pretty good year last year, and they're expecting big things. He's more hype than substance in production, which happens. But they have good wide receiver Antoine Wells, 928 yards last year. Transfer wide receiver Eddie Lewis from Memphis, who had over 600 yards. Tonka Hemingway, fantastic name as well, top defender there.
Yeah, Corin Joyner is a running back. I believe he's only a sophomore. Had a really good freshman campaign for the Gamecocks last year. Shane Beamer's done a pretty good job there. Don't know if the fan base loves him all that much, though, which is weird. Because, besides Spurrier, they haven't – Lou Holtz was there, too. Okay, they have a pretty good lineage of coaches, but usually they're in their tenured years there. They need to improve the OL and their run defense. The run defense was 13th in the SEC last year, so was not very good. But, if you remember right, South Carolina lost a heartbreaking bowl game to Notre Dame last year.
Yeah. Yep. I have Florida 5th.
I do as well, and I think they're going to be scratching a claw just to make a bowl game.
Yeah. They obviously didn't watch a whole lot of Graham Mertz at Wisconsin because he was named the starting quarterback. And outside of his one game in the COVID year against a Lovie Smith coached Illinois team, he did not do a whole lot. He was not very good. He was not very good for them. But they have 2 really good running backs that are returning. Montrell Johnson had 10 touchdowns. Trevor Etienne, I assume that's Travis Etienne's brother.
Yes, I think it is.
Had over 700 yards, and they'll be good defensively, per usual.
Well, they were not good defensively last year.
They were not.
So,
Okay.
No. They got a new defensive coordinator, Austin Armstrong. They fired their previous one. They only have 4 returning starters on the defense side of the ball, which could be a good thing. They gave up 28.2 points per game last year. They gave up 175.2 rush yards per game last year. So got to tighten screws up there. Billy Napier in his second year down there in Gainesville. It will be interesting if they fail to make a bowl, how patient they are with him, because Florida has lost a lot of recruiting steam in that state, not just to Florida State or Miami, but to Central Florida as well.
Well, into Bama, Georgia,
Sure,
LSU,
sure. Well, yes,
national
sure.
powers,
So,
Clemson.
I mean, we have the Florida Gators documentary about the Urban Meyers coming out tomorrow on Netflix,
Can't
which
wait.
I'm really looking forward to watching that. But it's crazy to think that team was at just there not too long ago. Now they're fighting and scratching to make a bowl. I mean, but they've whiffed on some coaches. Jim McElwain, even though he got him to the SEC championship twice, they were pretty mediocre under him. And then,
Dan Mullen.
Dan Mullen.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be great there. He was good at Mississippi State. He just did not do very well there.
Yep, Dan Mullen. Thank you. I couldn't think of it. Yeah, he did not do well there. So I don't know. Something needs to click down there because, you know, I said this last week. I hate the saying, X. If X is good, it makes college football better. I said that last week when talking about
Florida State.
Florida State. Thank you. And now I think the same thing could be said for Florida. So,
I have Missouri finished in 6th.
I have Missouri as well.
Brady Cook, their quarterback, returning through 14 touchdown passes. Chris Abrams-Drain is, I think, a all SEC second team preseason on their defense. Yeah, they're kind of losing some recruiting steam there as well. Illinois kind of come in and been able to sell a better program here for the first time ever here the past year or so, and they've gotten some guys from the St. Louis area, East St. Louis, which Illinois really struggled there, and Missouri had kind of had on lock, but things have kind of the tides have kind of changed a little bit.
I really wish they'd get that series going again. I always thought that was a fun football series.
They are
okay.
I don't know. I think it's in 2 years because they have Kansas for 2, and then I want to say it's Missouri back again. I know it is coming back as it, I think it's more of a home and home than it is an actual series. Tanner's got ghosts in his house.
Ghost named Elway.
But I do think it's coming back.
Yeah, I just always enjoyed watching it. You know, just as a college football fan that had no dog in the fight. I always thought it was a pretty competitive game. I remember the year Illinois was good in 07, the Rose Bowl. That was a really good game. Start the year, if I remember correctly, because Chase Daniel, I think, was on that Missouri team.
I think Missouri was ranked second. They were at one time ranked second in the BCS poll. That's when it was Kansas 1 and Missouri 2.
Re-seen against Chase Daniel. It was at Arrowhead Stadium. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I also have Missouri, though, 6th in the East. Eli Drinkwitz, their coach. New offense coordinator Kirby Moore. We'll see what he can do. Defensively, they were pretty good with Missouri standards last year. Gave it 25.2 points per game. They returned 8 of their 11 starters back on defense. So, if your defense or offense is decent and you return an amount of starters, say 7 or 8, at least out of 11, that's pretty good now in the world of the transfer portal.
Yeah.
And last, we both have the Vanderbilt Commodores.
Yeah, they they were dead last in the preseason SEC poll. However, they got 8 votes to finish first, which shows you the media poll Vanderbilt has down there, which is kind of stupid. But yeah, they got 8 votes to win the SEC. But their stadium's torn apart. Have you seen that?
It's not going to be. Yeah.
And they play, I believe, this weekend too. I think they had a week. They
play Hawaii this weekend. They host
right.
Hawaii. Yes, 17-point favorites over Hawaii. It tells you how bad Hawaii is going to be this year.
Yeah, it looks terrible, and there's no way they're going to have it done in time. It'll be good enough to play because it's not the field's not torn up or anything, but like the end zone is completely. Behind the end zone, I should say, is completely torn.
Yeah, Clark Leah, I believe how you pronounce his last name, or Lee. He's their coach. He doesn't shy away from confidence. He's a very confident guy. He's made his presence known at SEC Media Day the last couple of years, saying he got big dreams to win the SEC championship. I mean, what else are you going to say, I guess, as a coach? But maybe that's probably not the smartest thing to say. AJ Swan's going to be their quarterback this year. Like you mentioned earlier, they lost Ray Davis, running back to Kentucky. Defense was last in the conference last year. Gave up 39.8 points per game in conference, and they get 7 of those 11 starters back.
Yeah, they did somehow win 5 games last year, so they're right on the cusp of being bowl eligible. But
which is a big deal for them. I mean,
yeah,
they've never really been that good. I forget what year Purdue will eventually go there because they had a home and home, and Purdue hosted them in 2019. Within the next 7 years, Purdue goes there sometime. I don't know what year that is. I might have to look it up. Maybe for next week. So, but yes, that is the SEC East. Let's switch over to the SEC West. Who do you have as the SEC West champion?
I have Alabama.
I have the Crimson Tide as well.
Yeah, Jalen Milroe. He played quite a bit when Bryce Young was out. He had some electric moments running the ball.
He's a big dude.
Yeah, and he's fast. Don't know how well he's going to throw it, but
will he be the starter?
I think so. That's who the projected depth chart I saw, which was from like a week ago, had him as the starter. But I don't think they've actually announced it. Ohio State hasn't announced a starter yet either. But I assume Milroe's going to start, but he might not. Who knows?
Well, they have Tyler Buckner,
yes,
transfer from Notre Dame, and new offensive coordinator Tommy Rees coming from Notre Dame. So there's some familiarity there. They also have a young guy named Ty Simpson, who's probably going to be in the mix, but he'll probably be third string. But knowing Bama, they might have some packages for him too. So Nick Saban led team. I don't know what else there is to say. They have talent all over the place. They have depth all over the place. They're going to be good. It's just, are they going to be good enough to win the SEC as a whole? Yeah. Can they beat Georgia? And my answer is no. I still think Georgia wins the SEC over Alabama.
They have 7 guys on defense on the 3 all SEC teams. Their best offensive player is probably their tackle, J.C. Latham, who was first team preseason all SEC.
And they do host LSU, which will be a big game in regards to who comes out of the SEC West.
Yeah.
Speaking of LSU, they're my number 2.
They are also my number 2. Jaden Daniels is the preseason first team all SEC quarterback. 28 total touchdowns last year.
Yeah, he was pretty good. He'll be a Heisman hopeful for sure. Heisman contender. Brian Kelly, we don't like the guy. We've been on record. I don't know too many people who like the guy, but he can flat out coach football.
I don't dislike him as much now, I will say that.
I guess I don't as much, but he's still one of my top least favorite coaches in college football.
Yeah. And I think a lot of Notre Dame fans will agree with us now.
And he did just his team drum my team into the ground by 108 points in a bowl game that didn't even really matter.
I forgot about that.
Purdue was starting Austin Burton and a bunch of third stringers out there because they had a bunch of guys declare for the NFL, and it was just a drumming in the Citrus Bowl. No head coach. Brian Brown was the head coach. The whole staff was leaving. The whole staff was leaving. It was just a joke. It was a joke, and that's putting it mildly. I want to call it something else, but I don't want the FCC to get mad at us. So
Noah Kane, running backs back. He had 10 touchdowns. Defense is loaded, as it usually is. They have 3 guys on the all-SEC first team. Yeah,
they only gave up 22.5 points per game last year, and their defensive line should be even better than it was last year. I think they're preseason ranked 5th, which might be a little high. I was thinking more around 10, but they'll be good. They'll be in the mix. And like I said, whoever comes out on top of that game in Tuscaloosa, which last year in Baton Rouge, it was LSU over Alabama, will probably representing the West, which LSU did represent the West last year, but Georgia knocked the tar out of them in the SEC championship. So.
Yep. I have Mississippi in my 3rd slot.
I have Ole Miss number 4.
Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, their quarterback returns. He threw 20 touchdowns, and he ran for 614 yards last year. They have an absolute stud, true sophomore running back, Quinshawn Judkis. He had 1,567 yards rushing and 16 touchdowns as a true freshman running back last year. Transfer wide receiver Zachary Franklin tore Illinois up 2 years ago when he was with Texas San Antonio. Mm-hmm. He had 12 touchdowns in 21, 15 touchdowns last year for San Antonio. And they also have transfer wide receiver Trey Harris from Louisiana Tech, who had 10 touchdowns as well. They're going to score some points.
Yeah, it's interesting. They're going outside of the Power 5 and grabbing some absolute studs. That's what I think the transfer portal and NIL will do for you. If you do it correctly, you go get the guys that are ripping it up in the non-Power 5 leagues. Say, hey, come to us. You'll get on the field. You'll play in front of 80, 90,000. You'll make more money, yada, yada, yada. So Ole Miss is doing it right down there, hotty toddy in Oxford. Lane Kiffin started off 7-0 last year, but stumbled and finished 1-5 after that hot start. It is interesting. Jackson Dart, I believe, will start, but he has competition. Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State transferred there, so who I thought did a pretty good job at Oklahoma State. So they should be in good shape. QB 1 and 2 there.
Who do you have finishing third?
I got the Texas A&M Aggies.
I have them fourth.
Coming off a horribly disappointing 5-7 year last year. Jimbo
Constantly
Fisher
overhyped.
is the highest paid coach in college football. They're back in the top 25 for some reason. The preseason, probably because of recruiting class. So recruiting classes are always good.
Every year.
He's got a new OC. Good old Bobby Petrino
Oh,
is back
how
in
did I
college
miss
football. Slimy. Connor Wignum is returning as their quarterback. They got a good,
pretty good true freshman year.
yeah, and he's got a good core of wide receivers. Ananis Smith, Evan Stewart, and Moose and Muhammad III.
Oh, that makes me feel
Or
old.
Moose Muhammad. I'm guessing it's Moose said, but it's Moose Muhammad III
Man, that makes
are the
me
wide
feel old.
receivers. They also got Reuben Owens, who's a 5-star incoming freshman that's supposed to be starting at running back.
Oh.
So that's always exciting because though in the age of the transfer portal, we don't see these instant dynamic freshmen, instant results freshmen anymore so much. But defense has to get better. They are 15th against the run. But they only gave up 21.2 points per game. So their pass defense was really good last year. It's just on the rush defense was not good at all. So
I have Arkansas finishing fifth.
I do as well. Sam Pittman and the boys down there, Fayetteville.
KJ Jefferson, 33 total touchdowns. The running
He's
back,
a beast.
Raheem Sanders, 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns. 9 of their projected starters have transferred in, however, so it's kind of hard to project them in the SEC West.
Yeah, Raheem Sanders has a nickname Rocket Sanders, which is
That's
a pretty
cool.
good nickname for any offensive skill position, especially a running back. New offensive coordinator is Dan Enos, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And they have a new defense coordinator, Travis Williams, because that defense gave up 30.6 points per game last year.
Too bad.
They have 10 new players on the defense side of the ball.
I have Hugh Freeze's Auburn Tigers finishing sixth.
I got Zach Arnett's Mississippi State, so I have Hugh Freeze 7th, but we'll talk about Auburn first.
12 of their projected starters are transfers.
Yeah, they have tons of transfers.
including quarterback Peyton Thorne from Michigan State.
Which somehow I missed that until doing my
I
research.
completely forgot about it until I saw him as the projected starter. Hugh Freeze, he wasn't gone very long for kind of his indiscretions there at Ole Miss, but
Did a good job at Liberty, but
great job at Liberty. Yeah,
If there was an SEC school who would hire Hugh Freeze, it would be Auburn.
yeah. Auburn could not care less about morality. They want to win football games, and it's been a minute since they've been really good. So it's an interesting fit. Could go very poorly there, or very very well there.
Yeah, across a lot of these SEC teams, I'm saying have to improve their defense. Auburn, they need to improve both sides of the ball. Their offense last year only scored 24.8 points per game. You're not going to win a lot of games, especially in the SEC, scoring only 24 points per game. New defensive coordinator is Ron Roberts. They gave 172.7 yards on the ground per game. So, yeah.
Not a recipe for success.
Nope. But I have number 6. You have finishing last, Mississippi State Bulldogs.
Yeah, Mike Leach, of course, passed away last December, right before the bowl game against Illinois. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of system they run. I assume they'll kind of keep the same air raid, maybe mix it up a little bit more than Mike Leach would have. But their quarterback, Will Rogers, returns. He threw 35 touchdowns last year. The defense was really good, which is not something that Mississippi State or a Mike Leach coach team usually doesn't have a great defense because they score so many points, but they were very solid last year.
Yeah, that's the reason why I have them one spot ahead of Auburn. I mean, they got new offensive coordinator Kevin Barbay, who is been on record. He's got to change their offense up a little bit, but it's still probably going to be kind of air raid heavy this year with just because of Will Rogers. He's probably one of the better returning quarterbacks in the country, and nobody's talking about him. Put up some really good stats last year, and the defense, like you said, was really good last year, gave up 23.1 points per game, and they return a lot of starters. They might return the most starters in the SEC out of any team. So there's a lot of familiarity there. It's just they're in the tough part of the SEC, and their schedule's real tough even outside of that. So that's why. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they make a bowl game, but still finish 6th in the SEC West.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as like bowl teams go, there's 14 teams. I think we see maybe 11. I don't think Vanderbilt will get there. I think everyone in the SEC West has a chance. And a majority of the teams in the East as well, depending on their non-conference schedule. So it just means more, of course. So they'll likely put a lot of teams in bowl games.
I'll go 10. 10 make a bowl, and if Florida can scratch their way, they'll be 11. I think you get 6 in the West, excluding Auburn, and Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky in the East, maybe Florida. I think Missouri and Vanderbilt are outside looking in.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I assume you have Georgia winning the SEC championship.
Yes, I have Georgia. They will be one of my 4 playoff teams. I'll save my other 3 for next week.